Hey, what is up everybody? My name is Moise. Welcome back to another video on the I'm Your Jammer channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about cameras. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so you might think, Apple has the best camera quality amongst all companies, but if we really look at it, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the best phone that Apple has released, the camera megapixel is 48, while phones like the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra have 128 megapixel camera in their phones, and the Moto Edge 30 Ultra has a 200 megapixel camera. Yet, when we talk about best smartphone cameras, the Moto 30 Edge Ultra is never mentioned. Why? To truly understand this, we have to look at the evolution of cameras. So let's rewind the clock all the way to 1816 when Frenchman Joseph Nicéphore Niépce invented the first camera. See, cameras back then were very simple. You would take off the cover, protecting the sensor, and then the light would hit the sensor, and all the light that would hit the sensor would be gathered, and when you would snap the shutter button, all that information would be gathered and stored. So, that would mean that the bigger sensor you have on your camera, the better picture you're going to take. But, look at this. Look at how big this camera is. They can't fit that into such a small body. So, the solution, our cameras are a lot and keep getting more and more based on software and less on hardware. Every time you take a picture, not one picture is taken, but hundreds of pictures are taken from different angles, using different cameras, different lightings, and then AI inside your phone snips and cuts all of those images together in seconds, so that when you click on that image, it's the perfect image. It's like perfectly crafted. It's what AI thinks that you want. It'll brighten some of the colors up more, it'll add more hue, it'll make this look better, it'll make that look better. And so that's an issue we're seeing now. You also have to really code your software to benefit the actual hardware. The iPhone 14 Pro Max, for example, a 48 megapixel camera. That's a huge jump from the 12 megapixel cameras that Apple had been doing for a long time, since like the iPhone 7. So the software was the only thing that had been improving over the time. Obviously, you saw a difference in camera quality throughout the years, but the hardware was still the same. The sensor size was still the same. So how was it happening? They kept refining their software. They kept making it better to a point where we really liked what we were seeing. Now, when we jump into a bigger sensor and don't alter the software, our camera quality just takes a nosedive, because what's happening is that the pictures being taken by this camera are being over-processed. They're adding much more hue, much more light, much more skin tone, much more color, much more brightness, because what the software is used to is a much lower quality sensor. It's taking pictures and it's crafting pictures as if it's a 12 megapixel camera, when in reality, more light is being allowed to enter, which means that less processing needs to be done. That's why when new cameras come out, better sensors come out, you should usually wait a few years for them to actually refine and tweak their software over the years to actually complement the sensor. Marques Brownlee does this very scientific experiment where he takes a bunch of phones that came out during the calendar year and he puts them up on a website. This time he did it, and he allows people to go on there and vote. You can still do it. There'll be a link in the description below. This is up until like the end of January. And so people can go there and they can vote about what phone, what camera, and what picture they think is the best. And there's a bunch of different pictures, and there's a bunch of different types of pictures taken. You have night mode, you have in different angles with different backgrounds, all stuff like that. And so what actually we found out was that Apple, throughout all those years, was lacking. They would usually get out in like the first or second round. So that means scientifically, people don't like Apple cameras. But guess who won? This year, 2022, the Google Pixel 6a was the phone that won the best smartphone camera award. It's a 12 megapixel camera. That's the camera on this. But the reason that phone won is because the software was just so good. It was refined, it was tweaked, it was made better over and over again, to a point where it was the best complement of software and AI with hardware and the sensor. And that's what really allowed the Google Pixel 6a to get ahead. And the Google Pixel 6a isn't even that expensive a phone. It's like $699, I believe it is, around that price range, compared to like $1,200 phones with the biggest sensors that aren't even finishing in like the top 3. So, what does that tell us? As we progress, as we get more into this AI world, focusing on megapixel count becomes less important, and focusing on how the AI generates these pictures is more important. Yes, megapixel count is still extremely important in my opinion, just not as much as it used to be before. Before, everything was about how big the sensor was and how much light it can capture. But now you need a good software to complement that good hardware. If you have a lackluster software and a good hardware, it's not going to work out. However, if you have a decent hardware and good software, they're going to be able to balance each other out. So, as we head into the future of AI, we got to understand a lot of our images are being processed at a rate that we can't understand, and they're not really the original photo. It's been tweaked, it's been edited before we can even think about it. So before you put on any filters, before you go into the editing station and like change the hue and the brightness and all that, it's already been done with your phone's AI. That's what the phone thinks you want, and so that's what it makes. So that's what's going on with cameras. But how come Apple doesn't make it? We all love Apple cameras, right? But how come it only gets past the first round, maybe, and like loses in the second, maybe if it's lucky gets to the third, but never makes it to the finals? Well, here's the reason. The thing with Apple cameras is it's much more well-rounded. So just like with Samsung and Apple, they're much more well-rounded. They aren't focusing on one thing specifically, they focus on a much more variety of things. Samsung and Apple have more than just best picture taken. They want to give the best user experience as well. That's why Apple, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, actually won the Best Smartphone Setup Award of 2022 by Marques Brownlee. The reason is not just because of how good of a picture it can take, but also other factors, as if how fast is the camera loading up? How fast is the autofocus? How fast is the image processing? How fast is the video? How good is the audio quality? All of these things also play a huge role. And so that isn't tested in a blind smartphone camera test. And so that's why the phone, while being much more well-rounded, falls behind. It's good, it's decent in much more things, but not the best in anything, essentially. Now, another reason Google phones have been outwinning, something like that, have been doing better on average than Apple and Samsung phones, is because of their AI. Like that. Thing with Apple is that the AI flat blends every face, right? That's what it does. It gives the same amount of color brightness, color hue, all that stuff, all editing, no matter your skin tone, no matter your skin color. Google doesn't do that. Google looks at your skin tone and it determines what the best brightness would be for you. And so that allows for the best type of picture crafted for that person. Every person is different, and so the Google phone allows for a different type of setting for every person. Apple and other phones don't allow that. And so that's why Apple phones have been falling behind in the camera tests. So that's the cameras, that's what we're going into. Yeah, that's pretty much what you need to know about our cameras now, and I'll catch you guys in another episode. Peace.